So we couldn't do that space for what we've got planned for today. So welcome all for coming. If you're brand new to CSWS, make sure you check out our website and events that are coming up. I'm really happy to announce Joyce Chen for one of our CSWS Research Grant Fellows for this academic year. We've really been trying to expand our grants programming into the arts and be able to support more performance-oriented as opposed to just research-oriented projects. So we're so pleased to have this as part of our grants portfolio this year. So I'm going to let Joyce check it away.
Thank you. Well, thank you all for coming. I know this is a busy time, week 5 in spring term. So today's talk will be more like talk and then music. And I will give you a little bit more background of each composer and then how my research is interwoven to my not only programming for performances but also teaching. So I'm assisted today by 3 of my students, so Taylor, Jada, and Avery, and I will introduce them before the performance. So I want to start this new talk by this question. What percentage of music today by major orchestra is by women composers? Do we want to guess? Yes. 1. 2%?
Under 5.
Okay.
10.
10?
I'm optimistic.
5, 10? We're pretty good. So the answer is not that great. It's actually 7.5%. And we know women make up roughly half, if not more, of the population because we tend to live longer because therapy and everything. That's a joke. Anyway, so this doesn't mean that women haven't been participating in musical activities. So there's several reasons for this. Obviously, professions. Many women, up until very recently, it's just not a viable profession, and also haven't had the chance of going to graduate school like what we do here and having that opportunity of even becoming composition professors. So this is what we're encountering with kind of a larger picture of 7.5% of kind of orchestral works. But what I do, I specialize in 17th and 18th century music, where roughly, if I want to say early music, that is Western art music before 1800. I think that number is more like 1 to 5%. I think it's more like 1% or less. And when I was still an undergraduate student, I only know one, back then knew one female composer at that time. And I don't think any of the undergraduate, again, this is like 15 years ago, any of the concerts I've been in had any pieces by women composer. And that was just kind of a different, it's only 15 years ago, it's already a different generation. So, just to give you a little bit background, as I said, the only female composer I knew at the time is, her name is Elizabeth Jaguet de la Guerre. And I know that because she's a very prominent harpsichord composer. And then I will actually be showcasing one of her pieces later. And then, this is fast forward 2019. So this is another reason why I was so into this project. 2019, I helped actually organize this conference at Princeton University that's commemorating her 400-year anniversary. And that was at Princeton University. And then what happened was, because of this conference, my academic advisor, Wendy Heller, and another scholar, Beth Gleason, actually decided to publish this book. This is an edited volume that was just out last month, and I actually have a chapter in this. And I kind of talk about the different aesthetics, preferences that Barbara Strozzi might have in terms of playing with the harpsichord and also voice. And later, 2024, actually in this very room, I actually did a whole lecture recital on keyboard music by only women composer of 17th and 18th century, which is, I don't think there have been that much work done on it, and I will show you a slide later. And then when I taught musical backing handle in summer 2025, I also expanded kind of the course design. So in the past, I think they're having a few mentions, but for me, I added 2 units actually on women composers. So this is kind of the background of like where we are. And I now want to start with some of the pieces, and then we will bring around to some of the strategies or some of my recommendations of how we can go from here. So this is actually a picture of Giulio Caccini, not woman. But the reason I'm putting him here because Caccini for singers in the 17th century was very important because he's one of the first who wrote treatises on vocal ornamentation. That you will hear Taylor and Jada both use in that style. But what is very interesting was he actually has several daughters, at least 2 we know, became musicians. He was really influential in terms of like this new vocal style and also teaching a different ways of playing continuum, like different accompanying style. Yeah, if you want to come over here, you can probably see it better. All right, so this is one of his daughters. This is Francesca Caccini. Very beautiful. And you can see she was actually a singer, and she also played, I believe, keyboard, and she debuted at 13 at one of the operas, early operas. And she was a core musician for the Medici, just to add that. And very accomplished composer, singer, and teacher, and she toured Italy, which was very rare at that time for a woman. And she also taught other noble women how to read and also write music. And her publication, this is the first book of music, 1618, actually includes 36 sacred and secular motets, mostly for solo voice, but I think there are a couple duets in there as well. And her ornamentation very expressive and also has a more dramatic style compared to like madrigal of 16th century, for instance. And a lot of it is strophic songs, which you will hear actually in the first example we have. And this is kind of foreshadowing what Barbara Strozzi, which is more mid-century, 17th century, her style is. And Francesca Caccini was super famous because she was probably the first woman composer to actually compose an opera. This is from 1625, and again, this is probably the first we have. And then we actually do have the music that's survived. So they're having some performances. I actually performed this back in 2022 on the East Coast. Great composition. But the last line here, you have to read everything here. Despite Francesca Caccini, her own success, she knew how difficult it was for being a woman in the music industry. So she actually restricted her daughter from performing, fearing this would damage her public image. Because at this time, and we will talk more for Barbara Strozzi, is that if you're a performing musicians, some people can mistake you for being a courtesan or a concubine. So it's kind of a fluid, a fluid position. And so if you're performing, publicly, especially probably before marriage, then this might taint your reputation or public image. So this is one of the caveats of being in the music industry for any, young maiden at this time. So I would like to now turn to the first example, which is Little Aria by Francesca Caccini, and I'm going to be performing with our master student, Jada Murray. And do you have a few words you would like to talk about?
I do. So this piece, you can use this. Thank you. This piece is called Chi desia di saper, which comes from the first line, Chi desia di saper che cosa è amore, which translates to those who desire to know what love is. So in this piece, the speaker is reminiscing about the frustrations of falling in love, and she's expressing her desire to just not feel those frustrations anymore.
Chi desio di saper che cos'è amore, lo dirò
Jada was doing different ornaments, like different kind of elaborate figuration between the verses. But maybe we will hear even more of that when Taylor is singing pieces by Barbara Streisand. So this is early 17th century. So already you see a women composer, definitely very interesting composition. So one thing to add is that one of the reasons why we might not have had so much exposure to works by women composer, because I think our kind of Western musical canon is very based on the idea of genius, which is like Beethoven, he was going deaf, and the only thing he wanted to do was writing symphony. Beethoven had one opera, that was not a very successful thing that happened. So we focus on these few figures, Beethoven was one, Brahms, and all that, like someone who's only focused on doing one thing. So that's a really kind of romantic idea. But if you would go back a little bit, this is, back in the day, 17th, 18th century, music doesn't exist just in, a composition room. Like not someone just writing music. Usually they're writing music for court, for salon, for opera, for church, or something. So women definitely was participating as well, but just in different settings. So that's something I wanted to emphasize, is women definitely participated, and a lot of time they were pedagogue. They were the teachers for these nobilities. So, and also salon, this is an alternative space to court or church. And we know, especially in like Roman church, women cannot really sing choir and things like that. So church setting, that's a little bit different. So male dominant setting in here. But they offered, so these salons and academy offer an alternative space for women composers to explore and also participate as performers and kind of experimenting with others. So this really afforded the opportunity for Barbara Streisand. She's, again, a little bit later than Francesca Caccini. She was the adopted daughter of Giulio Strozzi, who is also a composer and poet. And also very active in this Italian salon, or salon, I'm just going to say that, because there's several different ones, and then this is Unisoni, that's the other one. And usually they have different kind of salons in different cities, so this is the Venetian salon, that was an offshoot. And basically, what happened with these salons is, what I mentioned earlier, is kind of shield their public image, because it's more insular, it's not just like in the public, that kind of shield their reputation for being a musician in this context. And she was trained by opera composer Cavalli. So Cavalli was kind of the most dominant opera composer after Monteverdi in mid-17th century, just to give you a little bit context here. But then she never performed or composed opera, probably for the same reason I mentioned about reputation. But what was rare was she actually published several volumes of her own works, very rare at this time. And we now very luckily have all the volumes edited with critical editions, with translations, and a lot of research. Again, the last point, she's often, you can see this picture, this pretty suggestive. And again, like we had, during our symposium that I organized at Princeton in 2019, one of the first scholars that started writing about Barbara Streisand, Ellen Rosen, spent about 30 minutes talking about this painting. I'm not gonna go into it, so I'm leaving this up to your own interpretation. But again, this doesn't diminish her talent, and also just virtuoso, like singing as a singer. So what we're going to do today is actually, what we're going to hear today is actually a piece from her volume dedicated all to sacred music. So this is volume 5 from 1655. There's several purposes for this volume amid all the secular music. And if you listen to other Barbara Streisand songs, are very a lot of sexual content. Of course, not as explicit as today's, but if you have listened to Monteverdis, you can see there are a lot of kind of double entendre, like rhetorical devices she's using. But what she actually composed this sacred volume because she wants to kind of like show people her kind of piety, like religious observance, helping with her public image. Also, this was actually her kind of, we think, speculating that she was trying to get a court position at the Medici court. So she actually dedicated this to one of the Medici members in 1655. That didn't pan out, unfortunately, but still doesn't diminish this whole volume. Okay, so we have, I'm gonna skip over this. So we're gonna go straight into O Maria, and I'm going to be performing with our DMA student Joyce Chen.
Just to add to Joyce's notes, so this piece, O Maria, is from her collection, Sacri Musicali Affetti, and it's her only collection of sacred songs out of her 8 volumes of published music. Again, they were dedicated to Anna de' Medici, trying to achieve a court position, but also interestingly, this set was published a year before her 2 daughters entered the convent of San Sepolcro. So it was helping her public image, but also perhaps trying to help her daughters and help them win favor. And again, much of Strozzi's vocal music is set to secular texts with themes of unrequited and erotic love. But this music is very different in that actually 4 pieces in this volume represent the veneration of the Virgin Mary. And then I just want to say a little bit about Strozzi's vocal music too. It's almost entirely written for lyric soprano, and it's very virtuosic. And I think that her compositional style displays great sensitivity to the text, experimentation with form and style. And not so much in this piece, but other pieces in this collection feature a lot of unprepared dissonance, extreme chromaticism, and they really represent a colorful palette of emotion.
Oh, music just for a little bit. So this is kind of a list I have compiled, keyboard music that we've composed, composers that have composed keyboard music. And of course I'm not gonna play every single one of them, but I will give you a taste of hopefully 2 composers. The first one is what I mentioned, probably the first Baroque female composer I learned as an undergraduate student, is Elizabeth Jacquet de la Guerre. She was famous because she's actually one very prominent harpsichord composer. She was a child prodigy, very active at Louis XIV court, and we have actually small fragments of different compositions, but the harpsichord works were actually preserved, which is great. She also composed like an opera, but that was actually kind of incomplete. And she even continued her career after marriage, which is again not common at this time. And we also have some of her, actually one of the CSWS concert from February, I believe, for one of her cantatas with another 2 guest musicians. So these are some of the accounts about her as a composer and also musician in general. So she can sing, you know, at sight and accompany herself at the same time. And she can improvise for half an hour, just playing and with the best possible taste. And this is important because in the Baroque era, we're thinking about musicians not so much like how fast can they play, how many notes can they play, but it's more about taste. Like, is this tasteful, or is it just, you know, showing off your flashy techniques? And she was definitely very technical and very virtuosic, but she kind of did it in a more nuanced way, more subtle. So this is one of her unmeasured prelude, which I'm not gonna go into it, but if you're musical and you read, you can see that there's no bar lines. And this is a very French specific repertoire at the time, which is kind of improvisatory. So she wrote these, and there are probably 1,000 different ways of playing them. I won't be playing one of these today, but I'll be playing actually an allemande that she wrote. Allemande is a dance, and usually they will give a different name and for the allemande. And what's interesting is actually she wrote the double, which is the ornamented version. And Baroque musicians at this time are expected to improvise or add ornaments whenever we take the repeat, meaning we're playing the same piece again. But she actually was very specific and actually wrote that piece. You can probably tell this is the original ornamented version. Very, very, very virtuosic. So I'm going to be playing this piece right now. by the last name, you probably think she is Spanish. And yes, but she actually mostly spent her time in Vienna, and she was actually tutored by Haydn, I believe. She's from a noble family. She's praised for a touching expression by Charles Burney later on. And what is really cool, she's actually one of the first female composers to write harpsichord concertos in 1760, which I plan on playing in the near future. And she's very much influenced by this later 18th century style. So what we heard in the first, half of this talk were very much 17th century, more expressive, very free. But what you just heard from me playing, that's already early 18th century, way more measured and almost controlling a way that's similar to what you probably hear from like Mozart era sonata. But what she's, her influence is kind of more like dramatic Empfindsamer style, which is very kind of, can be melancholic or all of a sudden very dramatic. So I will only play due to the time, I will only play the first half of her G major keyboard sonata, I believe. Yes. So unfortunately I don't have a better score here. But what you can see here, I don't think this is actually the writing, it's probably a copyist. But what happens is there's actually a lot of repetition. Some of you can read music, you can see it's the same figure over and over again. And what she's really doing here is kind of exploring the new keyboard at this time. So harpsichord kind of was dominant late 16th century, early 17th century, and then actually in 1700 we have piano, the earlier version of piano, not like that. Very much looks like this, but then piano mechanism, so hammer action instead of plucking. But at 1760, around this time, we already have a pretty good, kind of medium level piano that people like Mozart was composing on, and Haydn as well. So she's actually kind of like exploring the options on the keyboard, so I hope you can hear that. I'm kind of, if you can see it, I'm kind of moving between the top keyboard and then the lower keyboard for these different contrasting sections. So I'll only play the first half of these sonata before the end. All right. Spend this year working on this project is I generally try to program 10 to 20% of my concert by works by women composers and or underrepresented composers. So I play a lot of contemporary music, so as we know, harpsichord is mostly dominant until 18th century, and then pretty much ignore until the revival of like period instruments. This is mid 20th century or so. So ever since mid 20th century, we have a lot more composers writing pieces for harpsichord, and actually there's been work doing, someone was like cataloging on every single piece that was composed after 1950 featuring the harpsichord, including the Beatles. Actually, if you listen to a lot of Beatles, there's actually harpsichord in there. So that's something I try to do. I know it's not always possible, especially when we're trying to think about a theme. But this is something I strive doing also for my teaching and also research. And what I try to do is reframe the narrative. I think a lot of time I see, you know, especially someone like Barbara Strozzi, I think a lot of people like to say, oh, you know, she was so bitter and, you know, she was treated as a courtesan. But then if you remove all those things, just looking at her work, she was remarkable for just being a composer of 17th century. Many of the composers never published. What we find are just in manuscripts. But the fact that she actually went through publishing was remarkable. Also, she's coming from a pretty noble family, so she had direct actually access to the printer at that time in Venice. So this is something I like to think about, reframing the narrative, like where are these composers we haven't focused on enough, because most of the time we're thinking about bigger works like symphony, or works or operas that are usually tied to a court appointment or so. But as we already know, like most women did not have that opportunity, but they were composing music and also participating in music making in different settings, salons and domestic settings, and they were also teaching each other. And convent, of course. Today I didn't get to feature one of the composers, Isabella Leonarda. She was actually one of the first composers that actually composed all these instrumental works, actually for the nuns in the convent to play on violins and other chamber works. We don't have enough personnel today to do that, but hopefully you can come back for another concert here at Tyson, and we'll be happy to perform that piece. And yeah, like one thing I like to say is celebrate divergences. Is, you know, rather than thinking, you know, this is different. I like to celebrate this is different, and this is different kind of music that we don't really see, like Strozzi's, all the sonatas. We see that, we don't really see that as much, and especially she actually has that voice, and she was accompanying herself. So the way she writes is different from, say, French Cavalli, her teacher, who's a man and probably doesn't have the same kind of vocal sophistication as she does. So I like to celebrate these moments. I would like to end today with a piece, also by Jacques Delaguerre. But what is interesting is actually written for violin. But what I like to do is I like to make early music, meaning again before 1800 or so, music before 1800, accessible for everyone. So during Jacques Delaguerre, oboe was still in a different form, not like today when you see oboe is all wooden, very few keys, very different kind of mechanism, different technique, and not a lot of repertoire written for oboe at 17th century basically. So Avery, one of my students, in participating in Collegium, said, you know, she really wants to play Baroque, and then she's a great improviser. So I said, well, that's fine pieces, and violin has about the same range as oboe. So we have to do some tweaks and modification, but we're making this piece actually available for oboe players. So this is also something I like to do. You're only thinking about this piece. My former professor at Stony Brook was able to do early music with saxophone quartet. So that's a lot of course, arrangement, but this is still getting this music, play. So this is just a portion. The whole sonata is like 15 minutes long. So we're only playing the last two movements of Jacques Delaguerre Violin Sonata in D minor. Thank you. well. But then the training the music for the convent was also very interesting, especially from like Leonardo, for instance. Like her works are actually score for 2 soprano and 2 alto, and things like that. So it's a very different kind of writing, which is helpful today because I feel like I can just like try out different instrumentation. But yes, they definitely do have training as well. And a lot of time, these convent, even though we say they're convents, they don't necessarily live there. They have association, but Leonardo, for instance, did not really live at the convent. She was still from a noble family and had musical training, and her status as a noble woman had resources to different instruments and also just different musicians, for string playing and so forth. Yeah. Yes?
Does that mean that the women composers who we do know about were mostly noblemen just because
Yes.
they didn't have access?
A lot of time, yes. Even if you're thinking about composer at that time, yet still also very much noblemen, or if they're court composers, a lot of time there's a kind of family lineage for that kind of education, just because access. It was a very different time. I think nowadays we can go on YouTube or go on some music studio and learn and pay. That wasn't really an option back then, not so much.
Is the music that we heard today, do you think, representative overall of other Baroque composers, males included, or do you feel like female composers were doing something qualitatively different with the music during the time than their male counterparts?
Oh, love that question. I wouldn't say qualitative. I think just different aesthetics. I think it's hard, especially, it's just hard to compare apples and oranges, like the Strozzi pieces or Francesca Caccini. These are a lot of time from the woman's perspective writing about something, right? About unrequited love. And from a male perspective, that might be different. But I think it's representative. All the pieces I've chosen are, I think, really like strong pieces, like very well composed. Again, like when I'm choosing, yes, I'm very mindful of the representation, but I don't want to shoot myself in the foot. I have seen kind of okay composition by female composer, and just like male composer, we have seen those. And I don't necessarily factor those in, but I think having those resources, knowing they're available is helpful. And depends on, who I'm collaborating with. I mean, these are all very high caliber musicians who are doing these complicated pieces. But when I have taught in different settings, one of the slides earlier, actually I can go back real quick, right here. Actually, Elisabetta Gambarini, her work is super easy, like almost like Suzuki level for the keyboard, but it was composed that way. Like she wanted those pieces to be lessons. So some of these composers are very aware of what their works are for. So if they said it's harpsichord lessons or vocal lessons for, like for someone they're teaching that's 13 years old, just starting to learn how to play the keyboard. So it's going to be very elementary, you may, compared to the pieces we just heard. Those are pretty virtuosic. But I don't think that kind of take away the quality. And when I'm looking at these different composers, they definitely have different breadth of like compositions. Like if something that's, especially something that's published, that's usually more polished and sophisticated versus something I found in just manuscript that they're just sketching out some ideas. Yeah, hope that. Yes?
Your U of I says that you briefly apprenticed at Zuckerman Harpsichords International, is that right?
Yes.
And is that your harpsichord?
No. No, my harpsichord, that one lives in a different office. But this is actually belong to our U of O instrument. But no, I wish I have time to, this will be probably 500 hours of manual labor. When I built my harpsichord, which is not here on display, that one, the factory said, well, build that harpsichord was about 100 hours. It took me about 500, just because once you build it, once you put the glue down, you can't take it apart. So you make sure, I practice on different pieces and also the painting. Again, I don't have that instrument here. It's very ornate. I painted every single corner, including the soundboard. And once you paint there, it's not like, can I just sand this down and repaint it? You can't do that. So I think the painting took me like hundreds of hours just practicing.
Was it fun to build?
It was so fun. But I don't have this job. No, don't say that. But I'm just saying, I love building. It's actually my, I have one instrument in my office right now waiting to be finished by me. So I love building harpsichord. Thank you. I can tell you, I think I'm the first, I know this for a fact, I'm the first Taiwanese woman to build harpsichord. That I know. But I don't think there are that many, I don't think I know other Taiwanese people that build harpsichord. So but I know for sure as a female, I'm the first one to build a harpsichord. So, cool.
Thank you so much, Joyce.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for coming today, and please look on our schedule for future talks that you can also attend.
Thank you. Awesome. Can we have a picture?